Alright, this is the Wolfman, and it's time for the Retro Time Machine, baby, where your host Jay Jennings talks to the grooviest cats of the 70s. Now, without further ado, here he is, my main man, Jay Jennings.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Retro Time Machine podcast, where we discuss all things retro, including lost TV shows, which was the subject of our last show about Wonderama, which was about an hour long. So I thought I'd do this much shorter show today, sort of a continuation of the lost show theme. I am your humble host, Jay Jennings, author, filmmaker, and pop culture historian. Today we'll be taking a brief look. As I said, this is a much shorter show, but I still wanted to do a show on this topic. It's a lost show, once again, that hasn't aired since 1973, when the 17 episodes of this magical show ran in reruns after a successful first-year run from 71 to 72. The show is considered lost, like many other memorable children's shows in the early 70s. It was a very memorable show, like Wonderama, based on mysterious decisions by these networks to simply erase the tapes and make room for new shows. Illogical, asinine, and completely impractical. But it was done, nonetheless, and of course this is devastating because it deprives future generations of both kids and adults from watching, enjoying, and learning from these lost shows. On today's episode, like I always do, whether I'm interviewing a famous icon from the past or showcasing a popular subject like lost TV shows, I'll be featuring some rare photos and video footage about today's subject, culled from my extensive library of rarities, which I've been researching and collecting for over 45 years. Anyway, let's get to the show that I'm talking to you about today. It was called Curiosity Shop, probably one of the coolest educational children's shows of all time. In my opinion, ranking up there with Wonderama, Make-A-Wish, and Dusty's Treehouse. Which might be the topic of future shows. Even though it only originally lasted for one season, it was produced by Sandler Burns Marmor Productions at ABC Studios. And let's just show you. That's where it was, right there on Vine Street, inside ABC Studios. And I'm going to show you for the first time in 50 years. As I said, I'm privy to a lot of rarities in my research. So here, for the first time in 50 years, is the opening title sequence of Curiosity Shop in color. So there you have it, the original opening to Curiosity Shop that was written by and composed by the great Henry Mancini. Let me give you a background on Curiosity Shop. As I said, it was an American children's educational TV show produced by ABC. It was executive produced by veteran Looney Tunes director, animator Chuck Jones. And let's see if I can get a picture of Chuck to show you. I mean, all your favorite Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes from the 60s. There he is. And he was given the reins of this show to come up with actually was sponsored by Kellogg's. And they wanted him to come up with a public television series similar to Sesame Street, and that would be inquisitive to children, and where different things would be I guess explored, like dance, music, clothing, the five senses, weather, space and time, rules, flight, and even dolls. So Chuck was the man to get that done. And as I said, it only lasted 1 year, and then it played for 2 years in rerun, or a year in reruns. The idea, it debuted on September 11th, 1971, with a pilot with Shirley Jones, and we'll get to that in a second. Then after that, 17 episodes, which are all lost, played for that every Saturday morning, I think at 10 a.m. It moved to Sunday in its second season, I guess to make room for the ABC Saturday Superstar movie. Anyway, so the program featured 3 inquisitive children, 2 boys and a girl. The girls I'll talk about in a second. They switched off every week. So PBS, after they premiered Sesame Street in '69 and proved to be a success, Michael Eisner, who was ABC's vice president at the time, asked Chuck Jones to create this type of show. And I mean, you couldn't get anybody better than that. They also wanted to incorporate the great Bob Baker and his marionettes. There's the late, great Bob. And kind of, in my opinion, the show is almost like a laugh-in for kids, because these characters, these animals, were all behind a wall, and they were voiced by some great voice actors of the time, including June Foray and Mel Blanc and Bob Holt and Don Masick, Les Tremayne, and of course the great Daz Butler. But we'll get more into that in a second. I'm also in this show. What I'm going to do is, it's going to be a brief show. It's not going to be a long show like I do for Wonderama and stuff like that, because that was 25 years worth. This was a 1-year show. But I am going to go over all the characters, both the human stars and the wall of animals that were on the show. And they were just a very cool group, very advanced, almost like Animal Farm. But it was so enjoyable to watch. Anyway, so as I said, they got Academy Award-winning composer Henry Mancini, who created that opening theme, as well as the bossa nova theme music that played throughout the show. Dean Elliott wrote additional music for the show. Noted screenwriter Irving Phillips provided some of the scripts and animation art, and they even he did The Strange World of Mr. Mum, which was on the show. Mel Lazarus's comic strip Miss Peach, which we'll show a clip of later. Jonathan Hart's comic strip The Wizard of Id, or ID, or Id. Virgil Patch's cartoon Big George, and of course Hank Ketchum, who illustrated Dennis the Menace. He was on the show a few times, and we'll talk about that in a second. Ray Bradbury was also credited as one of the show's writers. So anyway, so let's, I guess, talk about the actors who were on the show. And we'll start with Barbara Minkus, who played Gittel. And she was, you can probably say she was the star of the show. And she played, as I said, Gittel, kind of a Yiddish Mary Poppins, so to speak. Very lively Broadway actress. You also might remember her from Love American Style. And whenever you would say the word witch, she would appear, and it was just, she would interact with the kids. She would fly. As I said, she was multi-talented. She would sing and dance and just have some great interactions with the kids, as I'm going to show a couple more photos of Gittel. Whenever she would appear, she would just say, "Did somebody call for a witch?" And she would appear, and then the kids would go, "Gittel!" And then, as I said, she would lead them through an hour long of skits and educational journeys. But and she would even make one of the kids fly. I think I'll show that one too. Gerard, one of the episodes, she made Gerard fly. If you look carefully, you could see the strings, but that was a magical episode as well. But let's get to the other human stars of the show. I think you can say it probably the most known one was Pamela Ferdin, who played Pam, the voice of Lucy, and she was on so many regular TV shows throughout the 60s and 70s. Star Trek, you name it, she was on it. Of course, The Beguiled, so many movies. And she has that familiar face and voice that we all recognize. And then the other star on the show was Kerry McLean, who played Ralph. And in one episode, what happened to him? I thought I had him. In one episode, he tries to play the trumpet while Gerard dances, and I have a clip of that I'll show in a second. There's Kerry McLean as Ralph, and then the other boy on the show was John Levin, who played the aforementioned Gerard. He was a little kid. He was like the most inquisitive on the show. He'd always be asking questions, why is this, why is that? He would also be very forgetful. That was like an ongoing running theme on the show. He would forget stuff. There was actually one episode based on his lack of remembering stuff. What was it my mom wanted me to remember? And at the end, I think Gitzel helps him. And then he won't shut up as the credits roll, now that he remembered what he was supposed to, what his mom told him. And then when Pam Ferdin wasn't on the show, Geraldine Fields as Cindy would be on the show, and I guess they rotated every week, but they were on the show, there she is, they were on the show together on the pilot with Shirley Jones. So there was like a preview show with Shirley, and she discussed different things, including music, and she showed you how to arrange musical notes, and she did a dance number with Gerard. But that was the human cast of the show. And they would dance a lot on the show, just dance, 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 to a lot of well-known, there's a very famous segment where they would dance to the music. They would sing and dance to, and there's Flippo, the hippo, or better known as Flip, and they would sing and dance, and of course the wall of animals behind them would join in. And they would either sing and dance, or Gitzel would lead them in a song or two. There they are. So every week there was a lot of music, a lot of dancing that was incorporated into the show, and it was very educational. It was just very entertaining. It wasn't boring at all. I show a couple more photos from the show here. And the kids were always asking questions. Why is this that? That's why the who, what, where, how, and why at the beginning. It seems like that Ralph is always holding that I don't know, is it that tuba or that trumpet, and he's just terrible at it. But anyway, which is an ongoing gag as well in one of the episodes. So anyway, let's look at the wall of animals right now, and then I'll get to some clips from the show. These are rare clips that haven't been seen in about 50 years that I've had in my archives. Some are in color, some are in black and white, so you'll get a taste of what the show was about. So let's go over all the, the characters. Well, first let's start with Professor Trivia and Monsieur Cuckoo, and which was Professor Trivia would read from the dictionary, and he would tell you what things were and what a noun was or what an adverb was. And Monsieur Cuckoo was kind of like this, was a bird, and he was very inquisitive. And let's talk about Professor Trivia. He was a bespectacled bookworm who lived in the dictionary, and he always supplied definitions. And Monsieur Cuckoo was a French accented bird whose catchphrase was, "That's right." "Oh, that's right." And he always tried to catch Professor Trivia with a nosedive before the worm would always dodge out of the way. He would always just crash into the dictionary and get his beak stuck in it. But those were the two animated characters on the show. Okay, so now let's get to, I guess there was two live action where actors portrayed the characters, and that would be Flippo the hippo, or Flip. We'll just call him Flip. Flip the hippo. And he was kind of like this orange hippopotamus with a jive-talking voice, and as you can see, oversized sneakers. He said, "Hey, man, groovy, man. You got to feel the beat." And you kind of see him in a jazz kind of speak, and he was very cool and hip. And let's move on to, and then the other character who was a live action actor inside was the Oogle. And let's see if I can find him. And he would always be in a skit where he would try to play the drums or an instrument, and the instrument would just crumble in his hands. Like he would try to play the drums, and the drumsticks would go through the snare, and he would just go, oops, oh well. He didn't speak, but it's one of those kind of blackout, quick little segments, kind of like Love American Style, that you'd always see the Oogle in. So anyway, so then let's get to the wall of animals. One special guy before we get to the wall, and that's Baron Balthazar, and he's kind of like the narrator of the show, and he would kind of, or Professor Balthazar, or Baron Balthazar. The professor was his little cartoon series, but he was Baron, and he was a derby-hatted little man who would spin tales in animated form about the inventions of his homeland, and so he was a very fun guy who would just move the show along. Okay, so now let's get to the wall of animals. As I said, it's kind of like Laugh-In. Okay, so let's start with the guy who basically just made a loud honking sound. That was the onomatopoeia. And as I said, that's all he did. He was like a multi-legged furry beast that spoke in sound effects, partially inspired by an alien in a Professor Balthazar episode. Of course, he had 3 eyes. Okay, the next character that was, well, not really in the wall. He was in the wall, I guess. And I guess his favorite, whenever he heard any noise, he would always yell, "Quiet!" And that was Woodrow the groundhog. And it would always wake him up, no matter what the kids were singing or dancing. And that was his favorite, that was his catchphrase. Okay, another animal in the wall was the Eek-a-mouse. And I think he also said quiet too. Sometimes, yes, he did. Quiet! And he would emerge from the wall to scream quiet. That was actually a very memorable character that I'm sure a lot of us, you guys watching, remember. Another animal from the wall was Nostalgia, the elephant. And she could always forgetful. She was sweet-tempered, and she always forgot. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. And she would give tidbits and give advice to the kids as well. As I said, the voices of these characters were all done by Mel Blanc and June Foray and Bob Holt and Don Masek and Les Tremaine and Dawes Butler. Okay, another character was, I always get her name wrong, but I actually call her Hermione, or Hermione, I'm sure, the giraffe. And she was kind of egotistical and thought very highly of herself, but she would give advice, but basically making her the star of the advice. So these are all the characters that would come out of the wall and talk to the kids. Okay, next is Arthur the Aardvark. And he was another great character. You can see how they're very simply made. It wasn't going to be too intricate. And as I said, they all lived in a wall. They were called the Wall of Animals. And Arthur was just another one of those. Okay, let's keep looking at another one. Here's one of my favorite, is Old Factory, the Hound Dog. And he was a very fun character. I think he was voiced by Mel Blanc, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm actually right about that. And that's why it was so familiar, because, oh, that sounds like Mel Blanc. And so, I mean, as I said, all these animals would interact with the kids and talk to them and give them advice. Like during one episode, Old Factory, I think Gerard, the little kid, couldn't find something, and he just wasn't feeling good. And so Old Factory said, come over here and count to 3 and you'll feel better. And the little kid would go 1, 2, 3, and Old Factory made the kid feel better. And then there is another character, and that's Halcyon the hyena. And another great character who would give advice to the kids. And remember, none of these episodes exist. I actually have 2 episodes that I was able to get, and those are the only 2 that you were able to find. back when you could trade in the 90s when VHS tape trading was huge. And I think I met a collector through one of the trading magazines, and I was able to pick this up. And that's where I was able to get the clips for you today. So I picked my favorite clips from the show to give you a piece of what the show was about. Okay, then one of my other favorite characters who would speak to the kids, I guess if they got something wrong, he would correct them or go, why is that? Like, for example, about dance. Oh, birds can't dance. And he would come and say, of course they can dance, and I'll tell you why. And that's Oliver Wendell, the lookout. And the lookout owl. And he actually was quite featured on the show. He would live up in a tree, and Gerard would always look up to him and ask questions, and he would give an answer, but always were the people who were birds or related to the bird family would always end up being highly praised. So anyway, let's move on to, okay, we're done with the wall. That was the wall of puppets. Not the wall of animals, if I said earlier, it's the wall of puppets. And then there was the chimpanzee, Darwin, who was always on the show. And Darwin, he made his home in a tree house. Go figure that out. I wonder how they got him up there for every show. So he was a regular on the show as well. So let's see, what else, as I'm looking at my notes. The other human characters on the show was the very famous Mr. Wizard, Don Herbert. And let's see if I can find a photo of him. Here he is. And he was already famous as his Mr. Wizard character, but he had segments on the show as well where he would show the kids how something worked, and the kids are always fascinated by him. So there's Mr. Wizard. And then the great Hank Ketchum, who designed Dennis the Menace, he was on for 2 episodes. Now let's see if I could show him. There he is. And he was on the show, and he'd have an illustrator board, and the kids would all gather around, and they would ask him how he draws, and he would show them, kind of like Tom Hatton did on Family Film Festival on Channel 5, who did Popeye, of course. He would get the kids, he'd show them how to draw Dennis, and how to draw all the other characters from the show. And here is when the kids gathered around Hank Ketchum, and he would talk to them about the history of Dennis the Menace, and that was also very fun as well. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about another great segment on the show, and that was Granny TV, and there's a picture of that. And Granny TV was a rocking antique television who presented old film comedies by Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. And you'd have to wind him up. I don't know if it says Granny TV, but it sounded like an old man. Oh, wind me up. Oh, now I feel better. Today we'll be looking at Charlie Chaplin. And then they'd show Chaplin doing his, with the fork inside the bread rolls routine. So those are, I guess, some of the characters that were on the show. But also I want to show you the different people who guest starred. It wasn't really about guest stars, but as I said, Shirley Jones. One more character. It's the SCHUCK, based after Chuck Jones' computer. I'm sure I said that wrong. And it was the CHUK computer. And it would go, okay, kids, I'm now taking you to 1947. And whenever they had a question, they would ask the Chuck computer about it, and he would show video footage and stuff like that. So those were a lot of the segments that you would see besides the singing and the dancing, was the kids asking the questions. Now, as I said, there were appearances by celebrities on the show, and not many, but the 2 most memorable ones, as I said, were the pilot, where the great Shirley Jones from the Partridge Family was on the show, and she kind of helped kick the show off by appearing. She just appears behind a door, and like a door slides open. Did somebody ask for Shirley Jones? And they're all like, oh my God. And so for the next hour, she leads them through different games and exercises, and she sings with them and dances. And I think she shows Ralph how to, I guess, draw musical notes. I think I have that photo. There we go. How to draw a treble clef and stuff like that. So you can see by some of the photos how entertaining this show was. I mean, just week after week would be a new segment. Like, for example, well, the shows would have a long title to them, and then that whole title would be would be the basis around that whole show. Like their episodes, for example, "Why Can't My Feet Keep Time with Ralph's Ear" was the name of the first show, and that's the one where Ralph is playing that awful trumpet and Gerard can't dance. The second episode is called "Does a Dog Forgive You If He Shakes Hands Left Pawed?" And that whole show is about, being left-handed. So you can see what the show is about. But anyway, I think I have one more of Shirley and Gerard dancing around the set. Yeah, that was a very popular segment and episode, and I think that's why they're very smart to get her on the pilot. So then I guess the advertisers saw, okay, this is a show that will be successful. Unfortunately, it proved not to be the case after a year. I think it might have been too sophisticated for a lot of the kids or the families, because this show should have been on for years. But as I said, it only lasted 1 year and then was gone, and then it only played in reruns. Okay, so now here's something that's very special. Around episode, where was it? Let me see if I could find it. Here it is. Now, episode number 9 is a favorite that everybody wants to see, that they remember from childhood. And it was starring Vincent Price. And Vincent came on and he said, let me get on the photo and then I'll do my impression of Vincent Price. Vincent said, hold on a second. He said, "Where do you go to get out of a scare?" And that was and they're like, and then the whole set was decorated kind of like with cobwebs and kind of like a horror film. And Gerard has the hiccups, the little kid, and the only way to get rid of them is to have Vincent Price come and help. So he sits most of the show in a black armchair, and as I said, the whole set is in cobwebs, and the animal puppets are also dressed kind of like as a horror character. So the animal puppets, I guess, let's see, Hermione is dressed like Vampira with long black hair and fangs, and Old Factor the Bloodhound looks like the Hound of the Baskervilles, like Sherlock Holmes. And so it was just really a fun episode. And then Vincent shared clips from several horror films, ranging from Phantom of the Opera to The Abominable Mr. Phibes, which he was just in when he made that. Professor Baron Balthazar shows a short called Martin Makes It to the Top, and the Onomatopoeia leads them all singing Onomatopoeia Scare Song. And then Vincent and Gittel, I guess, I guess they go over a witch's, bubbling witch's cauldron, and Gittel sings These Wonderful Things. And then she turns into Medusa, Lorelei, and the Wicked Witch of the East, and they all sing in harmony. Very famous segment. This is probably the most popular episode in its 17-year run. So I get emails actually asking me do I know where to find this episode? And I said, I wish I did. It unfortunately was erased. So as I said, there were 17 episodes, and the Vincent Price one, I think, seems to be, there he is again, the most popular one of the bunch. So anyway, let's move on to the part you've been waiting for, and that's the clips from the show. So we're going to start off with introducing Gittel, the witch. Remember, all you got to say is the word witch, and she shows up. Somebody call for a witch. So here we're going to begin 10 clips, very rare, that probably haven't been seen in 50 years, from Curiosity Shop. And here is the introduction of Gittel, the witch.
Sure, it could have been something that happened here at the Curiosity Shop. But there are so many somethings, I can't remember which is which. Did somebody call for a wicked old witch? Hey, hi, Ghetto. But you're not wicked. You're not even old. Oh, and bless that child. I hate to brag, Gerard, but I'll be 321 this Halloween. You don't look that old. Well, that's because I used to be a black cat. In fact, I'm halfway through my 8th life right now. Or is it the bottom half of the 9th? Oh, well, what seems to be the problem, little leprechauns? Us little leper cousins were trying to remember something. Then my mom told me not to forget about the curiosity shop. Let's see. Well, the best way to remember something you can't remember is to check out all the somethings you can remember. So why don't I remember something that we're all remembering and see if that's a something or someone that we're all trying to remember?
And that was basically Gittel's shtick. As I said, she was like a Yiddish Mary Poppins. And that's what she would do. She would engage in tongue twisters and just talk to the kids and help them solve their problems by using song and dance as examples. Okay, so clip number 2 basically includes Flip the Hippo and the Wall of Puppets. So once again, a very rare clip that has not been seen in a long time.
Very interesting, Mr. Computer, but it didn't help me remember what my mom told me not to forget.
What was it about, dear?
It had something to do with the curiosity shop, Miss Nostalgia.
Oh, well, maybe I can help you. We elephants never forget, you know.
Do you remember everything that's happened in here since last summer?
Of course, child. I remember everything as well as I know my own name, which is, now nobody help me. Oh, dear. I'll think of it in a minute.
Why should elephants remember anything when you think of what dull lives they lead?
Cool it, ladies. Sometimes the trouble with memory is that you can't stop thinking of something you're trying to forget.
Like what, Flip?
Like sugar, little fox.
Isn't sugar fattening?
She sure was.
Sugar was a girl?
Right on. All 2 tons of her. And I nicknamed her Sugar.
That is still funny 50 years later. So there was the Wall of Puppets and Flip. And the next segment was, I think, from the pilot, the first episode, where Ralph is trying to play the trumpet and Gerard is trying to dance and he can't keep step. And the girls comment about it. So let's take a look.
All right, Cindy, what are they doing?
Maybe it's some kind of ceremonial rain dance.
Well, whatever it is, it sure isn't music.
And it sure isn't dancing. Huh. Yes, huh. I am so dancing.
Fantastic.
Basically, that's how a lot of the shows would open. The guys would be doing something and the girls would be like, what are they doing? And then they would go back and forth, and that would be a segment in the show. And that one was, of course, Gerard had 2 left feet and couldn't dance. Okay, so now let's move on to another rare video, and this is Professor Baldassar doing his introduction of the show.
Ornette, close at hand.
Thank you, my reverberating rodent. As I was about to say, welcome to a magnificent melange of musical miscellany, featuring the residents of the Curiosity Shop.
Hello.
Curiosity Shop is brought to you by Nabisco.
Man, that just takes me back to childhood right there on a Saturday morning in 71. So anyway, you also got to see the Oogle, what I told you, what he does. He prepares for a big recital with a drum or a guitar, and it ends up being a catastrophe. Okay, and next, another popular segment on the show was when Mr. Jones, Chuck Jones, would talk to the kids via a tape recorder. He was never on the show, but his voice was kind of like Charlie's Angels, so it predates that, of course. It wasn't really Chuck Jones, but an actor doing his voice, and he would talk to them via this tape recorder. So let's take a look at Mr. Jones.
Well, how are we going to ask an expert if Mr. Jones is gone again?
Mr. Jones, expert answering service at your service. All questions, doubts, dilemmas, cleaned up and returned same day. State your problem when you hear the musical tone.
The musical tone is the problem, Mr. Jones. You see, Ralph thinks anything he blows through his pitiful horn comes out music.
And Gerard thinks this flaky hopping around is dancing. And the girls don't know any more about it than we do. And Pam says I'm precocerous, but it's fairly sick logic, right?
Oh, I think I understand.
You do? Then what's the answer, Mr. Jones?
What was the question?
Would you mind telling this, boys live, the real definition of music and dancing?
Like it was yesterday, I remember all these segments. And I always look forward to hearing what Mr. Jones, the tape recorder, had to say. Okay, let's move on to another cute but very popular segment on the show when Oliver Wendell Owl, the lookout owl, would give his kind of dissertations on life when it comes to birds and owls. So here is Oliver Wendell.
Well, what do birds know about dancing anyway?
Who is putting down birds?
Oh, nothing personal, Oliver Wendell, but we were talking about music and dancing.
And who decided that dancing was strictly for humans?
Aw, come on. Birds don't dance. They just fly.
Just fly, indeed. Who do you think originated some of the greatest dances of all time? Like the turkey trot, the buck and wing, pecking, the funky chicken, and, of course, Swan Lake.
Oliver Wendell, the owl. Another great segment. So let's move on to another rare clip. And here is Professor Trivia. This is one of the animated characters, a little worm who lives in the dictionary. I'm sure fans of the show will remember this character.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Neither adjective, adverb, pronoun, or noun halts this noble nematode in his appointed rounds. Music, noun. From the Latin, musica, the art of producing melody or harmony.
Harmony? Hit it!
Down by the old mill stream.
Right. That's just classic stuff right there. Our next clip will be was where Granny TV, that television that shows old films, is about to show a Charlie Chaplin clip. We don't show the clip, but it's you get to hear how Granny TV talks and how that segment usually went every week. So here is Granny TV.
Mom told me. And I know what she's going to do to me, and I hate that.
Wind me up a little, will ya? Thank you, Sonny. Now, I don't know what you're trying to remember, but I know some things we shouldn't forget, like Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin?
Yes, Charlie Chaplin. Bless his lovely old baggy britches.
But what does that have to do with Charlie Chaplin? He always helps me remember things I never saw.
Right. Like the dance Charlie did once, using only 2 forks and 2 buns.
And then, of course, it goes into the clip with Charlie with the 2 forks and 2 buns. And that's what Granny TV would show every week, just old classic clips from the 20s and before. Okay, our last rare clip is another animated segment, and it's called Miss Peach. Miss Peach had a class at at the Kelly School, and there was a bunch of students in there. It's kind of like the Peanuts, very similar. And in this segment, I guess there's a girl who's learning to be nicer than she usually is. So here's our last video clip of the show, and it's called Miss Peach.
Rudeness.
The Further Adventures of Miss Peach by Mel Lazarus. Very, very germane to the subject.
Oh boy, moving comic strips.
Marcia, I understand that you're not very nice to Arthur.
She's not very nice to anybody.
You may be right, Miss Peach. I will change, as of now.
Marcia promises to change. You mean she's finally realized what a rotten human being she's been?
You will try to be nicer, won't you, Marcia?
Yes. From this moment forth, I will be a nice person. Kind, thoughtful, generous, and sweet.
And there it was, Miss Peach, which was a regular cartoon segment on the Curiosity Shop. So anyway, it wasn't very brief, this show. I actually thought it would be much shorter, but it wasn't. I'm glad I was able to stretch it out and bring you kind of like the history of the Curiosity Shop, And I also wanted to make a special mention that if you remember Schoolhouse Rock, all those great little, 2 or 3 minute segments that appeared in between cartoons in the mid-'70s, Multiplication Rock and Grammar Rock and so forth. The first one that there ever was 3 is a magic number. 3 is a magic number, if you remember it, of course. And that was the very first Schoolhouse Rock that appeared on television, and it was on during a segment of Curiosity Shop, a little bit of trivia right there. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed our look back at this very rare and lost children's show from 1971, Curiosity Shop. And as I said, you will not be able to find episodes of it, maybe a little trinkling here and there on YouTube from a bootleg tape, but it's just one of those shows like Wonderama, like Dusty's Treehouse, like Make-A-Wish, that are just so hard to find. But hopefully through collecting circles and research, I'll be able to find some more and perhaps bring them out to light in future episodes. So I want to thank you all for spending your Sunday morning with me. And we'll see you again on another episode of the Retro Time Machine Podcast. I'm Jay Jennings. And as I always say, or at least I'm going to start saying, remember to keep it retro. Bye-bye.